She held the door for a stranger. What happened next changed her life. She almost didn't notice him. Anna had one hand on her phone, the other clutching her purse, keys jingling as she pushed open the heavy glass door of the coffee shop. She was running behind again. Her meeting was in 20 minutes. The line was already long. She wasn't in the mood to be patient. But as she stepped inside, she heard the sound of hurried footsteps just behind her. Without thinking, she reached back and held the door open. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe if you love meaningful stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I really enjoy seeing where these stories travel. The man behind her gave a quiet, "Thanks," as he stepped in. She barely glanced at him, just nodded and got in line. He looked like he was in a rush, too, wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt, phone in one hand, keys in the other. Probably just another commuter passing through, trying to make it through the morning. She didn't think much about it. The line moved slowly. People checked their watches, stared at the menu boards even though they probably ordered the same thing every day. Anna scrolled through her inbox. Too many unread messages. She sighed, then stepped forward when it was her turn. She gave her usual order, medium black coffee, no sugar, no cream, then stepped to the side to wait. That's when she noticed the man again. He had stepped up to the register, then paused, reached into his back pocket, then his front, then checked his jacket. His face changed just slightly, barely noticeable, but enough for Anna to see it. A quiet kind of panic. Not the dramatic kind, just the look someone gives when they realize they made a mistake they can't immediately fix. He stepped away from the register and mumbled something to the barista, something about forgetting his wallet. He turned toward the door like he was going to leave. Anna watched it unfold. She didn't know why she cared. Maybe it was the look on his face. Maybe it was just the kind of day where someone else's small problem felt easier to fix than her own. Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped back to the counter. "I've got his," she said quietly to the barista. The man stopped and looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Anna replied. "But it's just coffee. It's fine." He looked at her for a moment, like he wasn't sure if she was serious. Then he nodded, once, slowly. "Thank you." She shrugged. "Don't worry about it." They waited near each other by the pickup counter. A few people came and went. The man kept glancing over like he wanted to say more, but wasn't sure what. Anna didn't try to fill the silence. She just waited for her drink. When it came, she grabbed it and gave a small nod in his direction. "Hope your day gets better," she said. He smiled, just barely. "It already has." And that was it. She walked out and got into her car, drove to her meeting, sat through it like any other day. She didn't think she'd ever see him again. It was just one of those small things people do sometimes without needing a reason. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that the door she held open that morning wasn't the only one that mattered. Sometimes, a moment like that feels like nothing. A passing kindness, an ordinary gesture. But sometimes, it's the first line in a story that hasn't even started yet. The next day, Anna didn't think about it at all. She had a full inbox waiting for her before she even sat down. Her phone buzzed with back-to-back calendar reminders. Lunch was just a protein bar between calls. By the time the afternoon rolled around, the coffee shop felt like a distant blur. Whatever that moment was, holding the door, paying for a stranger's coffee, it had already faded into the kind of memory you don't expect to revisit. But the day after that, she stopped by the same coffee shop again. It was part of her routine. Same place, same time, same order. She didn't expect anything different. But as she stepped in, she noticed someone off to the side near the counter. It was him. The man from 2 days ago. He was holding his drink in one hand, a folded envelope in the other. He saw her and stood up straight, like he'd been waiting. Anna hesitated for a second, unsure if he was going to say anything or if she should pretend not to notice. But he stepped forward. "Hey," he said, offering the envelope. "I didn't know if you'd be back, but I figured I'd try." She took it slowly. It wasn't heavy, just a small card inside with something written in neat handwriting and 2 folded bills tucked behind it. "You really didn't have to," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I wanted to. You didn't make a big deal of it, and I didn't forget it." She looked down at the envelope. "You waited here?" "Couple mornings. Figured you might come back, eventually." Anna gave a small smile. "Well, here I am." They stood there awkwardly for a second. She wasn't sure if she should say something more. He looked like he might be about to leave. But then he asked, "You have a few minutes?" She glanced at her watch. She did. Not many, but enough. They sat at a small table by the window, the kind that wobbled a little if you leaned on it too hard. Their conversation started out simple. He told her his name, Mark. He'd just moved into town a couple weeks earlier, was still figuring things out. New apartment, new job, new streets to get lost on. She told him a little about her work, nothing too detailed, just enough to fill the space. He didn't ask too many questions. He didn't push. It felt easy, uncomplicated. Mark looked around the coffee shop, then back at her. "When that happened the other day, you paying for my drink, I was already having one of those mornings where everything feels a little off." Anna nodded. She knew the feeling. "That small thing you did," he continued. "It was the first thing that made the day feel normal again." Anna didn't know what to say to that, so she just said, "I'm glad it helped." They talked for a few more minutes. Nothing deep, just enough to make the time pass a little slower in a good way. Then Anna stood, her coffee nearly empty. "I should go," she said. "Got a meeting in 20. Mark stood too. "Thanks again, for the coffee, and for this." He tapped the edge of the table gently. She nodded and walked toward the door. Just before she stepped out, she glanced back. He was still standing there, watching her leave. Not in a weird way, just like he hadn't expected the conversation to go the way it did. She stepped outside into the sunlight. The street noise filled her ears again. The day moved on, but this time she found herself thinking about the coffee shop, about Mark, about how something small had pulled 2 strangers out of their routines just for a little while. She didn't know if she'd see him again, but she knew if she did, she wouldn't mind. Anna didn't go back right away. The rest of her week filled up fast. Deadlines, meetings, a birthday dinner she didn't really want to attend but couldn't skip. Every night she told herself she'd stop by the coffee shop in the morning. But each time, something came up. And each time it felt a little easier to push it off. Still, Mark stayed in the back of her mind. Not in a big, overwhelming way. Just a quiet thought that returned when things slowed down. Like when she paused at a red light, or when she stood in her kitchen waiting for water to boil. She didn't know what it was about him. Maybe it was how calm he seemed, or how he'd waited without knowing if she'd ever come back. By the weekend, she figured enough time had passed. It was Saturday. She didn't have anywhere to be. No reason not to go. She showed up just after 9. The shop was less crowded than usual. A few people sat with laptops, a couple reading the paper. Music played softly overhead, the kind that always sounded the same but made the space feel comfortable. She got in line and glanced around. Mark wasn't there. She wasn't sure why that disappointed her. She ordered her usual coffee and sat at a small table near the front window. For a while, she just sipped and watched people come and go. She didn't have a book. She didn't pull out her phone. She just sat there, quiet, not expecting anything. It was nearly 20 minutes later when she saw him. Mark walked in holding a bag from the bakery down the street. He didn't see her at first. He stepped in, looked around, then caught her eye. His face shifted immediately. Not surprised, just something softer, like he'd been hoping she might be there. He walked over. "I wasn't sure if you'd come back," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she replied. He held up the bakery bag. "I got something that might make this feel less like a coincidence." She smiled. "What is it?" "Cinnamon rolls, probably still warm." He sat down across from her. They didn't talk for the first few bites. The cinnamon rolls were soft and sticky, the kind you only find at old bakeries that still care about doing things the slow way. Mark wiped his hands on a napkin. "You ever wonder how many people you pass every day without ever knowing their story?" Anna looked over at him. "More than I can count." He nodded. "I used to think small moments didn't matter, that it took something big to change things. But lately, I'm not so sure." She thought about the day she'd held the door, the way she hadn't even looked back, the way she almost didn't notice him at all. "That's the thing about small moments," she said. "You never know which ones are going to stick." They talked for a while after that, not just about work or where they were from, but about things that felt more real, things they didn't usually share with people they barely knew. He told her he'd moved for a job he wasn't sure he wanted, that the city felt too big some days, that the apartment he lived in still didn't feel like home. She told him she'd been here for years but didn't feel much more settled than when she first arrived, that most days were fine but some just felt empty. Neither of them tried to fix anything. They just listened. When the conversation started to slow, Mark glanced at his watch. "I should probably get going," he said. "But I'd like to do this again." Anna nodded. "Yeah, me too." They stood up, gathered their things. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who happened to sit down once and found something worth coming back to. As she watched him walk away, Anna didn't feel uncertain or confused. She just felt glad she'd held the door. They started meeting once a week after that. It wasn't planned, not officially. No set time, no calendar invites. But somehow, they both kept showing up at the coffee shop around the same hour on the same day. Sometimes Mark was there first, sometimes Anna was. But either way, one of them always found the other. They didn't call it anything. It wasn't a date. It wasn't serious. It was just coffee, just conversation. But over time, those small, quiet mornings started to mean more than either of them said out loud. One Thursday morning, Anna got there early. It had been a long night. Work stress, family stuff, nothing major, just a buildup of too many small things. She hadn't slept well and didn't feel like talking, but she still went. Something about the coffee shop had started to feel steady, like it gave her a reason to sit still for a little while. She was halfway through her drink when Mark walked in. He spotted her right away, but instead of his usual easy smile, he looked concerned. "You okay?" he asked as he sat down. She nodded. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't push, just unwrapped the banana bread he always ordered and slid half of it across the table. "I don't do much," he said, "but I'm decent at sitting with someone who doesn't want to talk." Anna looked at him for a second, then smiled a little. "I can work with that." So they sat. Barely any words exchanged. Just two people in the corner of a coffee shop, sharing space, letting silence do what it needed to. When they did start talking again, it was about nothing big. Something on the news. a funny story from work. The kind of things people talk about when they're trying to come back to themselves. That was what surprised Anna the most. With Mark, she didn't feel like she had to be anything. Not interesting, not upbeat, not perfect, just present, just real. And it was enough. Mark didn't make big gestures. He didn't overshare. He didn't ask questions that went too far too fast. But he listened. And when he did talk, it always felt like something worth hearing. One morning he brought an old book with him, a used paperback with bent corners and a cracked spine. He set it on the table without a word. Anna picked it up. "You want me to read this?" He shrugged. "It's one of my favorites. Figured if you liked it, we'd have one more thing to talk about." She looked down at the cover. It wasn't something she would have picked for herself, but the gesture felt honest, like a window into the kind of person he was. "All right," she said. "I'll give it a shot." The next week, she returned it with a sticky note on page 76. "This line hit me." That was all it said. Mark read it later and smiled without telling her why. They never talked about what was happening between them. There were no labels, no definitions, just a steady pattern of showing up, week after week, with small things that slowly started to mean something. Anna didn't tell her friends about him right away. It wasn't that she was keeping it a secret. It was just that it felt like something still forming. Like if she said too much too soon, she might interrupt whatever it was becoming. What she did know was this. Something about the way Mark sat across from her made the day feel easier. Not in a loud way, not in a big sweeping way, just steady. Like he saw her, even when she wasn't trying to be seen. And she hadn't realized how much she needed that. One morning Mark didn't show up. Anna got there around the usual time. She ordered her coffee, sat at their regular table by the window, and waited. At first she didn't think much of it. Maybe he was running late. Maybe he'd gotten caught in traffic or had a meeting come up. These things happened. But as the minutes passed, she kept glancing toward the door. The bell above it jingled every time someone came in, and each time her eyes lifted with expectation. But it was never him. She checked her phone. No message, no missed call, nothing. An hour went by. Her coffee was cold. The table felt smaller without conversation filling the space between them. She didn't want to overthink it. They didn't owe each other anything. They hadn't made promises. But still, his absence felt heavier than she expected. The kind of weight that settles in your chest when you realize how much something routine has started to matter. By that evening, she still hadn't heard from him. She tried not to let it bother her. People had lives. Maybe it wasn't personal. Maybe it didn't mean anything. But she kept checking her phone anyway, just in case. 2 days passed before a message finally came. It was short. "Hey, I'm sorry for disappearing. My dad passed away. I had to leave town quickly. I didn't really feel like talking to anyone." Anna stared at the screen for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure what to say. Nothing she typed felt right. Nothing would fix what he was going through. So she deleted the first few drafts and settled on something simple. "I'm really sorry, Mark. You don't have to talk. Just know I'm here when you're ready." He didn't reply right away. Not that day, not the next. But she didn't press. She still went to the coffee shop once that week, sat at the same table, ordered the same drink. The barista asked if she wanted her usual pastry too, and she shook her head. It didn't feel right without him sitting across from her. The next morning, she almost skipped it. She got halfway through making coffee at home before stopping, pouring it out, and heading to the shop anyway. The table was empty again. But she sat down. Some part of her needed to keep the space open, not out of obligation, not even out of hope, just out of respect, for the silence, for the waiting, for whatever he might be going through that she didn't fully understand. Later that evening, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was longer. "Thank you for not pushing. It's been a hard week. My dad and I had a complicated relationship, but I didn't expect it to hit me like this. Coming back to town feels strange. Everything looks the same, but it all feels different now. I'm not sure when I'll be back to the shop, but I haven't forgotten our coffee. Or you." Anna read it twice before responding. "No rush. I'm still here." And that was it. There were no emojis, no extra words to fill the space. Just a quiet understanding between two people who had learned to give each other room to breathe. Anna didn't know what would happen next, whether he'd show up in a few days or a few weeks, but she didn't need to know. Sometimes connection wasn't about constant presence. Sometimes it was about being steady enough to remain, even in the quiet. She held on to that thought as she got ready for bed. The room was dark. The street outside was quiet. Her phone rested face down on the nightstand. And even though there was no coffee scheduled, no meeting planned, she knew that the space they'd created together, small, steady, and unfinished, was still there. Waiting. 2 weeks passed before she saw him again. It was a Monday morning. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that made everything feel a little quieter than usual. Anna hadn't planned to stop at the coffee shop that day. She was running behind, her email already full and her mood already tilted. But something pulled her there anyway. Maybe habit, maybe hope. She stepped inside, expecting the same routine, same familiar faces, same empty table. But he was there. Mark sat by the window, a half-full cup in front of him, his shoulders slightly hunched. He looked up as the door opened, and when he saw her, his face changed. Not into a smile, at least not right away, but into something softer, like relief. Anna didn't say anything at first. She just walked over, set her bag down, and took the seat across from him. "You came," she said quietly. "So did you." They sat in silence for a minute. There was nothing urgent to say, just the quiet return to a space that had been waiting. He looked different. Not completely, but enough. Tired around the eyes. Paler than usual. But he was present. That mattered more than anything else. "I didn't know how long to wait," she said. "I wasn't sure I'd come back." "What changed?" Mark stared out the window for a second, then looked down at his hands. "I was sitting in my dad's house last week, going through his old things, papers, photos, just stuff. And I kept thinking about how much space we spend our lives filling, only to have someone else pack it all away." He paused. "I found a picture of him and me. I was maybe 10. He had his arm around me. We were at a baseball game. It hit me harder than I expected. I don't even remember the game, but I remember the way he used to carry me on his shoulders when I was little, before things got complicated." Anna didn't interrupt. Mark took a breath. "I kept thinking about you, about the coffee, about how something so small became the only part of my week that didn't feel forced or broken." Anna nodded. "It didn't feel small to me." He looked at her. "I know. That's why I came back." They didn't need to say everything. Some things were understood in the space between words. "I don't really know what I'm doing," he admitted. "With the grief, with being back, with any of it." "You don't have to know." That quiet sentence seemed to settle something in the room. They sat for a long time after that. No rush, no plan. just the comfort of two people who had found something solid in the middle of uncertainty. At one point, Mark pulled out a small box from his coat pocket. He set it on the table between them. "What's this?" Anna asked. He opened it. Inside was a simple keychain, leather, worn around the edges. It had a small tag with a word etched into the metal. "Steady," it read. "My dad gave me this when I left for college," Mark said. "Said it wasn't fancy, but it was the kind of thing I'd want to have on a hard day. I forgot about it until last week." Anna picked it up, turned it over in her hand. "I don't know why I brought it today," he said. "Maybe just needed something to hold on to." Anna set it back gently. "Maybe that's what we've been doing this whole time." He didn't smile exactly, but his eyes softened. By the time they stood to leave, the sky outside had cleared just a little. Not much, but enough. As they walked out together, neither of them said goodbye. There was no need. The coffee, the conversation, the quiet, they were already part of something that didn't need explaining. They were still showing up, and that was enough. They didn't fall back into a routine right away. The next week, they missed each other. Anna came on Tuesday. Mark came on Wednesday. Neither of them knew until later. He texted first. "I stopped by today. Missed you by a day, I guess." Anna replied, "I'll be there Thursday, if you're around." He was. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be. They were finding their way back slowly, without pressure, without expectations. That Thursday morning, Anna arrived to find Mark already sitting at their usual table. 2 coffees, no pastries, just a simple, steady return to something familiar. When she sat down, Mark looked tired again. Different from before. Not grief this time. Something else. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, but not convincingly. "Work's been rough," he said. "Trying to catch up, but I feel like I'm always 2 steps behind. I'm barely sleeping." Anna sipped her coffee and waited. "I got called into a meeting with my boss yesterday," he continued. "They're making cuts. Told me my role might be one of them. Nothing's official yet, but—" His voice trailed off. Anna didn't say anything right away. She could see the weight in his shoulders, the way he kept his eyes down. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's a lot." Mark gave a small nod. "I keep thinking I moved here to start over. New job, new place, clean slate. And now it just feels like everything's falling apart again." "You didn't move for a job," Anna said quietly. He looked up. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "You might have told yourself that. But I think you were looking for something more than that." He didn't argue. He just looked at her. "You ever feel like no matter how hard you try, you're still just floating?" he asked. "All the time." They sat with that for a moment, just letting it settle. "I used to be good at keeping things together," Mark said, "even when I wasn't okay. Lately I feel like I'm not fooling anyone." "You're not," Anna said, but her tone was soft. "But that's not a bad thing." He let out a quiet laugh. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Say the one thing I didn't know I needed to hear." Anna didn't answer right away. She looked at him, really looked. "You don't have to hold it all together," she said. "Not here." He nodded again, slower this time. They didn't stay long that day. Both had to get back to work. But when they stood to leave, Anna reached into her bag and pulled something out. A folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Mark asked. "It's just a list," she said. "Things I do when everything feels like it's slipping." He unfolded it and scanned the first few lines. "Get outside. Drink water. Write one true thing. Call someone and say one honest sentence." He looked back at her. You wrote this for me? I wrote it for myself a long time ago, but I figured it might help. He folded it again, carefully this time, and tucked it into his coat pocket. Thanks, he said. Text me if you ever need another list. He smiled. Not a big one, but it reached his eyes. As Anna watched him walk away, she felt something shift. Not dramatically. Just a small reminder that connection wasn't about fixing someone. It was about staying when things got hard. And right now, that's what they were doing. Showing up, even when it was messy, even when everything felt uncertain. They weren't floating. Not anymore. They were learning how to anchor each other, one cup of coffee at a time. The next time they met, it was raining. Not a storm. Just steady, cold rain that soaked through your coat and made the air feel heavier than usual. Anna had forgotten her umbrella and showed up with damp sleeves and frizzy hair. She didn't care. Mark was already there, sitting near the window like always, 2 coffees on the table. He looked up when she walked in and smiled. You look like you fought the weather and lost, he said. She sat down, brushing the water from her coat. I let the weather win. Figured it needed the boost. Mark pushed her coffee toward her. Still hot. They didn't talk much at first. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows in a rhythm that filled the silence for them. Inside, the shop was quieter than usual. Fewer people. Fewer voices. It felt like the world had slowed down just enough to let them sit still for a while. After a few minutes, Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out the piece of paper Anna had given him the week before. I've read this every day, he said. Not all at once. Just a line here and there. Anna smiled softly. Any favorites? He unfolded the page, tapped his finger against the last line. Stay close to people who let you show up without pretending. He looked at her. That one. Anna didn't say anything right away. She just held his gaze, knowing exactly what he meant. I've spent a lot of years trying to be what people expected, Mark said. At work, in relationships, even with friends. It's exhausting. I know, Anna said. That's why I stopped trying a while ago. Figured if people didn't want the real version of me, then they didn't get any version. Mark gave a quiet laugh. Bold move. Lonely at times, she said, but less tiring. They both looked out the window for a moment, watching the rain slide down the glass in long, slow lines. Mark leaned back in his chair. I used to think I had to earn connection, like I had to prove I was worth being known. You don't, Anna said. You just have to show up. He looked over at her again. You make it easy to show up. She didn't smile big. Just enough. Just enough to let him know she heard it and felt it. They stayed longer than usual that day. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was everything they hadn't said yet. The conversation moved in and out of heavier topics. Family, regrets, the moments they wished they could take back. There were pauses, but they never felt empty. Just thoughtful. At one point, Mark pulled out his phone and scrolled through his photos. I found this last night, he said, turning the screen toward her. It was a picture of him and his dad, the same one he'd described weeks ago, at the baseball game. His dad's arm around him. They were both smiling, sun in their eyes, looking like they didn't know anything about what would come later. Anna looked at it for a long time before speaking. You've got his smile. Mark nodded slowly. I never saw that before. They sat there, quietly holding that moment between them. When it was time to go, the rain had eased up. Still falling, but lighter, softer. They walked out together, neither of them in a hurry. They stood under the awning by the door, not ready to step into the weather just yet. Mark looked over. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you held that door open for me, did you think it would turn into this? Anna shook her head. I didn't think it would turn into anything. And now? She looked at him, rain in her hair, coffee still warm in her hand. Now I'm glad I did. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't have to. Some moments are understood without needing to be named. They stepped into the rain, and they walked. It had been 6 months since the door. Neither of them marked the date on a calendar. There wasn't an anniversary, no big moment to celebrate. But they both knew it. They both felt it in the rhythm of how things had changed. Anna walked into the coffee shop just after 9, like always. Mark was already at their table. 2 drinks, a pastry split in half, her favorite. No one said it was a tradition, but it had become one. He looked up when she walked in, and she smiled without needing to think about it. You're early, she said as she sat down. I had a feeling you might be too. They sipped their drinks for a few minutes, talking about nothing important. A neighbor's dog that kept barking through the night. A strange email Mark got from work. Anna mentioned she might visit her sister next month depending on how things shook out. It was normal. It was simple. And it was enough. After a while, the conversation quieted. Mark leaned back in his chair and looked at her. You know, he said, that day you held the door, I almost didn't go in. Anna raised an eyebrow. Really? I was having a rough morning, didn't sleep, forgot my wallet, almost turned around and left. But something made me walk through anyway. She nodded. Funny how those moments work. I think about it sometimes, he said. How different things would be if you hadn't looked back. Anna took a sip of her coffee. I didn't think twice when I did it. It was just instinct. Maybe the best things start that way, Mark said. Not planned, just honest. They sat for a while, both of them letting that settle. The weight of how something so small, just holding a door, had opened something neither of them saw coming. Anna looked around the coffee shop. Same chairs, same people. But everything felt different now. Because of him. Because of what they had built. It wasn't just the door, she said quietly. It was everything after. The showing up. The listening. The sitting through the hard parts. Mark nodded. You stayed when things got messy. That mattered. So did you. He looked at her, eyes steady. Do you ever wonder what this is? She thought about it for a second. I used to. Not so much now. Why not? Because I don't feel the need to label it anymore. I just know it matters. That's enough for me. Mark leaned forward, his hands resting on the edge of the table. It matters to me, too. They didn't need to say more than that. Not everything had to be spelled out. Some things were felt in the quiet, in the consistency, in the comfort of being known without needing to explain yourself. They finished their coffee slowly, neither of them in a rush to leave. Outside, the sky was clear. A rare warm breeze passed through the open door. It felt like the kind of morning you don't try to capture. You just live in it for a while. When they stood to go, Mark reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. It was a small card. Plain. Nothing fancy. He handed it to Anna. She looked at it. On the front, it read, "Thank you for holding the door." She smiled. I figured it was time I returned the favor, he said. Anna slipped the card into her bag. You already have. They walked out together, shoulder to shoulder, not saying much. They didn't need to, because what started as a moment had turned into something real, something steady. Not love at first sight. Just love in time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy meaningful stories like this, we'd love to have you as a subscriber.